fire claims the life of a southeast Kansas woman. Another fire in Joplin heavily damages a building near downtown.
After celebrating virtually last year, churches are opening their doors for Easter Sunday. I'm Bronte Sorotsky with how churchgoers feel to be back.
A large area of Florida's Gulf Coast is under a state of emergency tonight. We'll tell you why.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
The Crawford County Sheriff's Office is conducting a death investigation following an early morning fire. This is KOAM News at 10. I'm Chris Warner. Now, officials say they received a 911 call about a house fire on South 250th Street, just south of Mulberry, just after 3:30 this morning. While firefighters were putting the fire out, an adult female was found dead inside the home. Crawford County Sheriff Danny Smith says investigators from the State Fire Marshal's office were contacted and the body has been transported to Kansas City for an autopsy. The cause of the fire hasn't been determined yet and the investigation is ongoing. Another early morning fire, this one in Joplin, left a building heavily damaged. This fire happened at 1330 South Wall Avenue near downtown. The building suffered smoke and water damage. The cause of that fire has not been determined. Nick Kelly joining us on what was an absolutely gorgeous day for Easter Sunday.
I know, a bit warm for a usual Easter Sunday, but you can't beat a dry Easter Sunday, and let alone a dry Sunday in general as we wrap up this weekend, Chris. 51, a chilly start this morning, but we made it to 76, warmer than our average high of 67 for this time of the year. I haven't seen anything all day long once again on the Skywatch Storm Tracker, maybe a few clouds skirting our far southern counties, but cloud cover ahead of a dry line that fired off some thunderstorms across Nebraska and Kansas. That's cloud cover that will filter in as we go through the overnight. Nothing underneath the clouds while we keep an eye on our next system well off to the west. In the meantime, though, temperatures are still kind of mild. Most of us in the lower to middle 60s, but eventually I do see us dropping back into the mid 50s for a chilly start for our Monday morning. But even with partly sunny skies back into the equation, as south wind kicks into gear and will push us back into the mid 70s for the afternoon ahead of us, I'm still tracking a better shot for storms by the middle of the week, Chris, and some of those could be severe as well. We'll break that down for you here in a bit.
All right, Nick, thank you. Well, of course, it's Easter Sunday, and many churches are celebrating in person after going virtual last year. KOAM's Bronte Sorotsky spoke with members of the First Baptist Church in Carthage to see how they feel about celebrating the holiday this year.
A year ago, due to the pandemic, most churches were closed like many other things, and churchgoers watched their Easter Sunday services online. One pastor, Jake Wright, says last year they were celebrating virtually, but it was not the same.
So last year, all the churches were having to do the live streaming thing, and that was still good, but there's no replacing actually being able to gather physically with your church family.
Although he says one positive outcome from this was their message actually reaching more people than they would otherwise.
So we had everybody jump on Facebook Live, and some people were able to kind of project it up on their TV screens. And it was really an amazing thing in some sense because I think that churches were able to reach more people on a Sunday morning doing Facebook Live than they would have on an ordinary Sunday.
But with Missouri's reopening, they were able to host an Easter service in person this year. One churchgoer says he's happy he was able to come back in person.
We did what we had to do, and that was to watch it live streamed on television, and it was kind of sad that you couldn't meet together on Easter Sunday, and this year it's just been wonderful because the weather's beautiful.
Wright adds that for those who still don't feel comfortable coming in person, they no longer do live streams, but they do air their services on the radio. In Carthage, Bronte Sorotsky, KOAM News.
Well, a large area on Florida's Gulf Coast is under a state of emergency tonight. Crews are scrambling to contain 300 million gallons of stored toxic wastewater that's leaking from a reservoir at a former phosphate processing plant. The breach is threatening Manatee, Hillsborough, and Pinellas counties near Tampa Bay. CBS News correspondent Nancy Chen reports from New York.
The Florida National Guard flew in additional pumps Sunday in efforts to prevent the collapse of a large wastewater retention pond in the Tampa Bay area that began leaking last week.
What we're looking at now is trying to prevent and respond to, if need be, a real catastrophic flood situation.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis flew over the Piney Point phosphate mine Sunday morning.
The greatest concern at the moment for human health and safety is the risk of an uncontrolled discharge.
Manatee County officials say a breach at the old phosphate plant reservoir could gush more than 300 million gallons of water in minutes, which could form a 20-foot-high wall of water. As a precaution, more than 300 homes in the area have been evacuated.
The steady drawdown of the processed water has continued at Piney Point, and we have thankfully avoided uncontrolled breach that would have endangered people and property in the evacuation zone around the stacks.
The ponds sit in stacks of phosphogypsum, a solid radioactive byproduct from manufacturing fertilizer that's right below the surface.
But to be clear, the water being discharged to Port Manatee is not radioactive. It is primarily salt water from the Port Manatee Dredge Project mixed with legacy process water and stormwater runoff.
County officials reported progress Sunday in containing the situation, but warned the danger has not yet passed.
Manatee County utility customers can rest assured that their drinking water is completely safe to drink. The water distribution system is a closed system without any way for floodwater to enter.
A sizable leak was detected Friday, and a state of emergency was declared on Saturday. Nancy Chen, CBS News.
The pond began leaking in March, and Manatee County officials have been discharging water since then. And we take this time now to honor one of our many four-state heroes. Private John Montgomery served in the Army from 1917 to 1918, spending time in France, his hometown, Galena. And we are proud to recognize Private John Montgomery, tonight's four-state hero. And remember, to learn more about other heroes or nominate one of your own, just head over to our website at KOAMnewsnow.com. And that's a look at our top stories and a quick check of the forecast on the KOAM News at 10. Still ahead, we'll hear from Missouri Senator Roy Blunt on President Biden's infrastructure plan. Missouri Senator Roy Blunt was on ABC's This Week this morning. There, he talked about President Biden's infrastructure plan and the issues that he has with the plan. Now, Senator Blunt says he's all for infrastructure improvements, but has concerns that the majority of the bill, while labeled as infrastructure, isn't really what people think.
There's more in the package, George, for charging stations for electric vehicles, $174 billion, than there is for roads, bridges, and airports and ports. When people think about infrastructure, they're thinking about roads, bridges, ports, and airports. That's a very small part of what they're calling an infrastructure package that does so much more than infrastructure. That I understand the dynamic of taking a popular title and wrapping it around a big bill that it's a fairly small percentage of.
Now, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg was also on ABC's This Week discussing the president's infrastructure plan. Now, Buttigieg pushed for the plan, stressing the need for infrastructure improvements across the country.
Each passing day that our infrastructure crumbles, that hurts our economy and it puts our safety in danger. And again, the American people are really impatient to get this done. We're determined to make sure that Infrastructure Week is no longer a punchline around Washington. That's what this robust plan will do, and it's time for action.
Now, on the COVID front, one of the members of President Biden's COVID advisory team, Dr. Michael Osterholm, weighed in on the possibility of a fourth COVID wave on Fox News Sunday. Now, he feels the variant in the U.S. has the potential to spread rapidly.
Well, I believe we are, and I believe that in some ways we're almost in a new pandemic. The only good news about this is that the current vaccines are effective against this particular variant B.1.1.7. But in a sense, this is a virus that is now 50 to 100% more transmissible or infectious than the previous viruses. This is a virus that causes 50 to 60% more severe illnesses. And so what at one time wasn't as much of a problem, for example, in cases in young adults, are now becoming very serious cases.
Well, this weekend has been beautiful, but will it last? Meteorologist Nick Kelly is up next with his complete forecast and what we can expect for the week ahead.
We all got to enjoy a nice Sunday, and for those of you that celebrated, hopefully you had a good Easter Sunday, as Mother Nature was certainly kind to us. Mostly sunny skies from start to finish, from the beginning of our time lapse of indigo sky outside of Seneca, Missouri, all the way until we hit sunset this evening. You can see even with a little bit of cloud cover skirting across here or there. No threatening weather whatsoever, making this a perfect way to wrap up the weekend. But ever since we did hit sunset, it has gotten a bit chillier. 64 though, still a bit mild at Joplin Regional Airport, with the south wind starting to pick back up at 11 miles per hour. That's still trying to keep temperatures up in the mid-60s around the Joplin metro, from 63 in Diamond, 64 in Webb, and a couple of 65s, for example, out near Galena and Baxter. Around the rest of the region, most of us are in the lower to middle 60s across southwestern Missouri and mainly mid 60s elsewhere across southeast Kansas and northeast Oklahoma. Eventually, though, I still anticipate us dropping back into the mid 50s, so it is going to be a chilly start for your Monday morning. Fortunately, even with partly sunny skies back in the forecast tomorrow and that strong south breeze back in action, we are going to be pretty much similar to where we were today, back into the mid-70s as we get the new work week and school week underway. I want to take you now to the map, the overall setup, because this is what I'm going to focus on for the rest of the 2 minutes that I have here. Southerly winds still in place, but a weak dry line that fizzled apart across western Kansas and Nebraska did fire off some stray rain and thunderstorms, but the cloud cover from that is going to start filtering in overnight. Nothing underneath the clouds, though. While we still keep high pressure to our southeast, keeping that south wind in play, this whole frontal system stretching from the Pacific Northwest all the way to New England, we're only going to worry about this backside of the system, this trailing cold front working across the Pacific Northwest. That's the cold front that'll start to ramp up our rain chances by the middle of this week, especially once we get this upper low between Portland and Vancouver to start digging across the Pacific Northwest, through the Rockies, and into the Central Plains. Before that happens, though, we're looking pretty calm for the rest of the night and to get our work week and school week started on our Monday. Again, any cloud cover out west filters in, just partly cloudy skies, nothing underneath the clouds, so we'll stay dry. And again, we will turn chilly as overnight lows drop back into the mid-50s. So most of us starting out around 55 at south wind at 10-15 in the morning, kicks into gear at 10 to 20 and gusts near 30 as we go into the afternoon. So that, despite partly sunny skies, should push highs back to 75 in Joplin. In fact, everyone like today, fair game to go back into the mid-70s before Monday afternoon is all said and done. Now let's focus on that next storm system. Ahead of its approach on Tuesday, I think there's enough warm air aloft to keep any good thunderstorm chances away for much of the day. Still not going to rule out a few random thunderstorms underneath partly sunny skies, but once we go into Tuesday evening, this round of the future track wants a complex of thunderstorms to work across the region and continue to bring in rain and thunderstorm chances as we go through late Tuesday night and into Wednesday morning. If this scenario can still hold, those thunderstorms could bring a low severe threat our way for pretty much the entire area. So we'll watch those storms between 9 o'clock Tuesday night until 5 a.m. Wednesday morning. Again, the main threats here, I'm thinking mainly wind and hail. Can't rule out a few tornadoes, but the main emphasis here will be, again, wind, hail, and some heavy rain that could hopefully wash away some of these tree allergens. 75 tomorrow, 76 Tuesday, 60s and dropping throughout Wednesday, and still rain on the backside of the system Thursday will keep us in the lower 60s, Chris. Then we'll stay nice and mild with highs back to 74 on Friday.
Spring is really starting to set in around here. These temperatures aren't dipping back that much before they warm up nicely. So.
Yeah, and with a kind of a decent shot for severe weather on Wednesday, that's definitely a sign of spring.
Absolutely. Nick, thank you so much. Well, coming up in sports, Pitt State hosts their annual spring game, plus NEO football puts up a fight against the number 2 ranked team in the country. Danny Terzer will take you back through the excitement of the weekend.
The Pittsburgh State football team took to Brandenburg Field on Saturday to play its annual spring game. The defense lined up against the offense to run through a handful of game-like drills. Quarterback Mac Sexton went 13 of 19 for 137 yards. Freshman quarterback Chad Dodson Jr. threw 2 touchdown passes, one to Jalen Martin here and the other to Jack Roberts. On the defensive side, the Gorillas forced 3 turnovers. Brandon Malikas, Jared Flood, and Dedrick Hutchins all came away with interceptions. Coach Brian Wright says it was good to see the team perform in a more realistic setting.
The guys put the game uniforms on, and you got a little bit of a crowd at the stadium, and the lights are on, and you get to see your guys in a different setting and see if they can execute now. It's a little bit more pressure, and see if we're going to block the right guys and be in the right gaps on defense. I thought overall our guys did a great job.
Pitt State kicks off their season in almost exactly 5 months. The girls will open the season on the road against Central Missouri on September 2nd. After falling in their season opener last weekend, the NEO Norsemen had a chance to make a big statement, hosting the number 2 ranked team in the country in Kilgore on Saturday. The Norsemen were down 14-0 before coming back with 2 touchdowns of their own. A missed extra point, though, had them trailing by 1. On NEO's final drive of the game, this play here results in a fumble. The Norsemen come just shy of overtaking the number 2 ranked team, instead falling to 0-2 to start the season.
We took them down to the wire and we had them. And it's the same things that we got better this week, the same things that happened last week. So close. We got such good kids, and they fought adversity. They went after it. They're tough. This was one of the toughest teams in the country right now. I know they are. So proud of them. All the way down to the wire, but we got those little bitty mistakes right now.
The Kansas City Royals close out their season opening series against the Texas Rangers today. The Royals took the first 2 games from the Rangers, now aiming to sweep the season series. In Game 3, the Royals trailing 6-0 into the 6th. Salvador Perez hits a 2-run home run to gain some ground. Kansas City will put 1 more run on the board in the 9th, but that won't be enough. They drop this one 7-3. The Cards also in action. They split the first 2 games of their series with the Reds. Today, the Cardinals struggle, scoring 1 run off of 5 hits. Meanwhile, the Reds put up 12, so they'll take Game 3 12-1. That leaves St. Louis at 1-2 to start the season. That's it for sports. We'll be back with more news after this.
A memorial has been set up outside the barricade at the Capitol where a Capitol police officer was killed. Flowers were placed along the fence remembering Capitol Police Officer William Evans, who was killed when a man rammed his car into Evans and another officer at the barricade on Friday. Friday's incident was the second attack at the Capitol since the January 6th riots. An armed robbery suspect is dead after being shot by a police officer in West Phoenix on Saturday. It happened around 8 o'clock at 75th and Indian School Road. Police said the suspect was at an Arco gas station when police showed up. Phoenix Police Sergeant Andy Williams says the armed suspect allegedly attempted to rob several people. They ran after the suspect, who went inside a nearby restaurant. Officers gave commands for the suspect to drop the gun, but the suspect ignored them, according to the Phoenix Police Department. That's when investigators said the suspect pointed a gun at the officer, who then shot the suspect. The suspect, whose name has not been released, was taken to the hospital where they later died. The officer was not hurt. At the Vatican today, Pope Francis used his Easter message to urge countries to speed up the distribution of vaccines to the world's poor. CBS's Elizabeth Palmer has that story.
The Pope led Easter Mass in the vast St. Peter's Basilica this morning for a small congregation of the faithful, masked and socially distanced. Italian police are back to enforcing a lockdown this weekend as a serious 3rd wave of coronavirus infections sweeps across Europe. The highest per capita death rate is in Hungary. To vaccinate as many people as possible as quickly as possible, it has started importing the Russian Sputnik vaccine to boost supply. France has the fastest growing infection rate in Europe, and it's imposed yet another stricter lockdown. Parisians were allowed to stock up on essentials, including Easter eggs, but they'll have to stick close to home for the next month and observe an overnight curfew. But spring has sprung, and patience with COVID rules, especially among the young, is wearing thin. In Belgium, police broke up a public party with water cannons. In Barcelona, in Spain, officers tried to enforce social distancing on the beach. It's now clear that vaccinations work. Britain is one of the world leaders, and here daily deaths have plummeted from over 1,000 a day in January to just 10 on Saturday. But most of the developing world hasn't got nearly enough vaccine or enforceable COVID restrictions.
Right now, rich, developed countries have enough vaccine to inoculate their entire adult populations twice over. Meanwhile, developing countries, on average, have only enough to do 30%. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, London.
We've got a final check of the forecast next. Health workers in a Rome hospital brought the Easter spirit to the wards today, despite the restrictions made necessary by the COVID pandemic. Dressed with full protective clothing, decorated with lambs, fluffy bunnies, and chicks, nurses and doctors in the San Filippo Neri Hospital did their best to cheer their patients up. Chocolates and smiles may not be enough to defeat COVID-19, but it brought some cheer to patients isolated from their families and friends. And that seemed to be the kind of the theme across the area. Easter today, bringing a lot of cheer to folks this holiday. Just a lot to look forward to, and a lot to look forward to in this forecast, except for midweek.
Yeah, I know. We can at least have another nice day to look forward to tomorrow with highs near 75. Maybe a few random storms Tuesday afternoon, but Wednesday we'll watch for strong, maybe severe storms to work in.
All right, Nick, thank you so much. And that's our time for now. Our next news time is at 5 a.m. with the KOAM Morning News. Of course, you can keep up with the latest news, weather, and sports at KOAMNewsNow.com and with the KOAM News Now app. And thanks for making us part of your night.